Well, good morning, everybody. As we start off here on Wednesday, one of the things I want to focus on is the potential pattern change that could upset the very strong onshore flow we're currently experiencing across the Pacific Ocean, targeting mostly California here. This satellite animation kind of shows you sun up to sundown yesterday. Okay, so that's kind of the area that's lit up by the sun on the Earth. And we got three systems, one, two, three big ones that are kind of lined up here. So we're going to watch this one moving closer today and this one later in the next 5 to 6 days, making its way to the West Coast. Now, this particular setup is just going to continue to hit the West Coast through the next 7 to 10 days. But there's a pretty important shift that'll be happening in this pattern we need to have a discussion about. So there is a little bit of a break for the West Coast given the first system is out. And that's why when we look at the all hazards weather map, we still have the wind advisories here along the coast in California and the flood watches for the Sacramento Valley, but no longer the major winter storm warnings and things like that for California. What we are going to be watching here is a system that's going to come out of the Central Rockies. And today, while there's a lot of fog to the north of it, winter weather advisories surrounding it, down south, there are some incredibly strong winds that are forecast to be coming across parts of New Mexico and Texas. And this has been an area that's been extremely dry, so there's the risk of dust storms out of this as well. Just showing you what that wind field is going to look like today. It's important to kind of see the size scale here. Here's the wind event we're going to be watching coming out of New Mexico and Texas, but this is just the sheer size of the next system lined up heading toward the West Coast and then one behind it. But again, we're going to question how long we're going to continue to see this. That's been a major topic this week. And one of the big changes right now that's happening is happening in Siberia. So I don't really do a whole lot of weather forecasting for Siberia. So I went out to one of my favorite websites, Weather Underground, just to bring up the current temperature there. It is minus 36 degrees. But what I want to show you is the 10-day forecast for this area using Weather Underground. Because if you take a look here, right across the top, they're going to be seeing temperatures. There it goes. Minus 57, minus 61. There's some very, very cold air that is moving out of Siberia toward China. And as we talked about in the in-depth report this week, that's going to displace the Pacific jet. It's going to be aided by a shift in the MJO over to phase 1, 2, and 3, which are in the Indian Ocean. And the net effect will be this. We currently have this long, extended branch of the jet stream that's running across the United States, but it began over in Africa and really picked up speed coming off of Asia. As we go forward in the forecast, what we're going to be seeing is that through the next 7 or 8 days, this is going to continue. I'm just kind of playing through this quickly. But once we get out there past about the 18th, 19th, 20th, the jet stream is expected to do a retraction. So you see right in through here, instead of extending all the way across the Pacific, we're now getting split flow. What will be important about this is this will slow down the precipitation for the West. And in today's report, I really talk about how the recent precipitation is impacting drought. We talked about how much more precipitation is needed, so if you get a chance, read it. But what you've got here is that this will set up a very active, almost subtropical branch to the jet that'll go from Texas through the mid-Atlantic. And that's going to impact the week 2 precipitation here. So let's talk about that here in a few moments. Now, as it stands, so far since this year, you can see exactly where the jet streams come in, right? It's coming to California, and it's moved right here across this section of the country. Now, remember, this was a big snowstorm earlier in the year. But north and south of it, it's been dry from the northwest through the northern plains into Canadian Prairie and down here in Texas. And that's again why with the stronger winds, I'm concerned about the risk for dust storms. You're also going to see in the forecast that these systems are failing to get to the east coast. They kind of curl up over the eastern Great Lakes, which is why our coastal regions, especially right here in the coastal Carolinas, have been quite dry in this particular pattern. But just thinking about the west, a great website to follow here kind of shows us currently where we stand with respect to percent of normal snow water equivalent at this point. And you can see several of these locations in the Sierra Nevada mountains pushing 200 to, in some places, almost 400% of normal. If we take this map and instead of looking at current snow water equivalent and look at what it would look like comparing it to the April 1st numbers, we're actually doing quite good in some of these peaks. But we need to have what just happened over the last 10 to 12 days. That needs to happen again, but let's spread it out over about 2 months. If that occurs, we will see California going into a great water year for 2023. So as it stands, we do have a slight break in the action in the west coming, but we're going to watch this system come out. Again, you can see the snow here this morning coming out of the Four Corner States in Wyoming. A little bit of light freezing rain possible here in parts of Wisconsin and scattered showers out ahead of this. But let's see what the high-res NAM shows. So going through the middle of the day on Wednesday, okay, see here's kind of the tail end of this event. We're going to watch a low. Watch it again. It's going to come out of Colorado and form over parts of Oklahoma and then move almost right over to where the Ohio and the Mississippi come together. Now there could be some light snow on the back of this, as you can see, but mainly out ahead of it we're looking at rain with storms farther to the south. I'll show you that storm risk in just a second. As this goes through the Ohio River Valley, we're going to watch this front tomorrow. You can see where it stretches here in parts of the southeast up to the Appalachian Mountains. There's going to be a risk for some strong storms with this. On the backside, could be a pretty quick turnover to some snow with some convective snow bursts here coming through parts of the eastern Corn Belt. And again, this is all while the west gets a little bit of a break going into Thursday. And as that pulls into New England, the heaviest snows are going to run along the eastern Great Lakes into this part of Ontario and Quebec. But again, we could see some light snow on the backside of this. There's just not a whole lot of really cold air to support more than that. But just to show you, today we do have the risk of some stronger storms that run right through the Mid-South, and tomorrow over parts of the southeast from Alabama to Georgia and South Carolina. So let's keep a close eye on that as it goes through. From here, I do just want to show you what the West will continue to get out of those next few systems. So let's just add it up. As we continue to see these next few systems coming on shore, the total precipitation values adding to what we've already received here range from 1 inch down here in parts of the San Joaquin Valley, heavier amounts down at higher elevation in Southern California, but then very heavy in Northern California out of this. And total snowpack, we're going to see another possibly 3 to 5 feet of snow in the Sierra Nevada, but better snows into the interior here in the Four Corners states and the Central Rockies. As the pattern shifts, we're going to start to see more activity increase for parts of the Pacific Northwest. And just a reminder, that's been an area that's missed out on a lot of this flow as of late. So from here, let's go right on into the European model and quickly watch where these systems are going to go. So we've already played this out, seen system number 1 here while the West Coast gets a short break middle of this week. But the flow comes back on this weekend for the West, and that's when the next big push comes in here. This will be Friday night into Saturday. Now we're going to watch another low come out. It's a little bit farther north than the current one. It's going to be in Kansas. Again, going to really rob much of the western southern plains of moisture, but go right across parts of the eastern Corn Belt into the eastern Great Lakes. And there's a third system that's lined up here. Could tap into a little bit more cold air that could come through the central United States. It's pretty far out there in the forecast, but there's some ensemble support for this. So I guess what I'm making a call for here is that we've got 1, 2, and then possibly a third system rolling through this particular area. Now, before we get to that third system, if you add up the next 2, the heaviest rains are going to be in this area and, of course, in the west. You can see how dry things are going to be, though, when we look at this WPC map down here in the southern plains, northern plains, and parts of the Canadian prairie. This is just what you get with this zonal wind flow pattern. But if you stretch it out 10 days and say who's got the best chance at picking up an inch of liquid equivalent, because there'll be some snow with this, of course it's going to be the West Coast and Central Rockies, but it'll be this quarter in the Ohio Valley and the Tennessee Valley getting toward the Appalachian Mountains in New England that sees the best chances. But note, drier and through here, and then as we talked about, drier along the coast, given the trajectory of these lows, is moving quickly to the northeast rather than cutting over to the east coast before making the turn. Now that could all change into week 2. We see getting out there past the 21st that we're going to go into this positive P&A pattern. That's a ridge in the west and a trough digging through the Midwest. It's not truly connected to a lot of cold air, okay? There's not a lot of cold air to take from Canada at this point. But that's why you see the week 2 forecast, the GFS, the European, and the CPC calling for a more active flow, really just following this corridor. So let's keep a close eye on that. In terms of temperatures, we just continue to see mild conditions across much of North America. The pattern has to go back to high amplitude to really start to change this up. And we see through the next 10 days, about the only place that really sees this substantial cooling is going to be the southwest. And again, this is compared to normal. We will watch late in the month for some shifts because that pattern is going to break down. The jet will retract. That will affect the temperatures at some point, but it's just a ways down the road. I am concerned getting into the month of February for a bit of a pattern flip that could happen, that could start to return some cold Arctic air to the Canadian prairie and then eventually to the central and eastern United States. Lastly, just want to show you the latest updates on South America. The models continue to trend a bit drier north here. So this is Mato Grosso and Goiás, Tocantins. This particular area is trying to harvest soybeans. So in the near term, this could be seen as favorable. But if it continues, because, La Nina is past its peak and the MJO is starting to move around. This could be something we need to be watching as this safrinha crop goes in. Very wet in central Brazil to finish that crop. And this dryness you see in Argentina, where it's also been very hot, some of the newest longer range model trends are trying to return better moisture in here, but it's not any time in the near term. Only isolated storms on the heat of the day are forecast in this very productive area I just circled. So we got a lot to be watching with this story in South America going forward. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks.